You go to a conventional provider, they're probably going to slap on birth control, maybe metformin,
Metformin. Yep.
right? Which again, these are just band-aids over symptoms. They're not treating the root cause of PCOS.
Mhm.
So you're never actually healing, or you're never actually going to get cured.
Hey, beautiful. Welcome back to PCOS Unfiltered. I'm your host, Lindsie, and today's episode is one that I know is going to spark some curiosity and maybe even challenge a few things you thought you knew. We're diving into a topic that has been everywhere lately, and that's GLP-1 medications. You've probably seen them all over your social media, heard about them from friends, or maybe you've even considered them yourself. But the real question is, are they actually helpful, or are we missing part of the conversation? Today, I'm joined by Zach Dancel, the Chief Operating Officer at Nava Health, a leader in functional and longevity medicine. What I love about this conversation is that it doesn't fall into extremes. It's not GLP-1s are bad or GLP-1s are the answer. Instead, we talk about what's actually true. In this episode, we dive into what GLP-1s actually do in the body and why they can be effective, where they're being misused or overused, especially online, why they should be seen as a tool, not a long-term solution, the importance of addressing the root causes, like insulin resistance, inflammation, and hormone imbalances, and how this all applies specifically to women with PCOS. We also zoom out and talk about something even bigger, the gaps in our current healthcare system, why so many women feel dismissed, and why a more personalized root cause approach is so necessary. If you've ever felt confused about GLP-1s or wondered if they're right for you, this episode is going to give you a much clearer, more grounded perspective. As always, the content shared on PCOS Unfiltered is for informational and educational purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the host and guests are not intended to serve as medical advice. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, exercise, or treatment plan. The information shared is based on personal experience and expert interviews and is not a substitute for professional medical guidance. Now let's get into it. Here is my conversation with Zach Dancel.
Yeah. So what are some things that should be monitored, throughout the process, like maybe lab work, eating, that type of thing? Like, what do you guys keep an eye on?
Yeah, so for us, we're doing labs every 3 to 4 months. We want to make sure that we're constantly keeping a baseline. We're not just doing your standard, 10 to 20 biomarker. We're doing 70 to 80 biomarkers every single time. We're going to
Mhm.
constantly look at all sex hormones, constantly look at your thyroid, how that's being impacted while GLPs. Look at your blood sugar to make sure that you don't have any hyperglycemic event, because it's powerful. It can drop and bottom you out and create that, which again people aren't realizing that are going to places where they don't need to do labs, where they don't need to talk to a provider. What happens when you're driving your car and you're taking a boatload of a GLP and your blood sugar bottoms out, right?
Mhm.
That's dangerous. And it happens. We've heard horror stories. Hasn't happened at Nava because we're running labs. We're looking at your A1C. We're keeping track of that. You're going to work with our nutritionists, right, to report your meals and your diets and how much your protein intake, the healthy fats, again, to help shift the behaviors, but also to make sure that you're doing it properly. Because if people are just coming to us to seek the GLP and they're not going to do it the right way, where we feel they could potentially do more harm than good, um, then that might not be the best fit for somebody. So, we want to, our goal is for you to be as successful as possible, right? So we're going to give you all the tools, all the support that we possibly can to see you there. But we want to make sure that you're doing the right way. We're going to keep you safe. And ultimately, in the long term, right, you've been able to change the behaviors that you can then eventually come off of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, there's just side effects. Let's talk a
Hmm.
little bit, a little bit about that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the extreme stuff I've even heard of, with vision changes and even like, blindness, in some cases. So, what are you seeing in that realm with side effects and managing and watching all of that?
Yeah. I mean, so the the scary ones, right, are bottoming out your blood sugar, because no one wants to do that. But the common ones, again, when you're not working with someone who knows what they're doing, and being able to give you the actual guidance, the most common one is going to be your nausea, your vomiting, and most of the times that's because they went way too high with the dose. They're titrating it too fast, or they're going based off of the guidance of what's out there on the web versus what's best for them. And they're also not eating enough, right? They're not prioritizing the right foods that can make sure that your body has enough fuel that it needs to, focus, high protein, making sure that you're getting your fibers. Because at the end of the day, one of the things that the GLPs does is slows gastric emptying, right? So we want to make sure that you're still supporting, your gastric emptying and clearing the pipes. But that nausea and the vomiting is going to be your number one that we see.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the other big one, right, is that people are seeing, they're calling Ozempic faces because people are losing all this muscle, right? They're not, because it does cause some muscle wasting. So if you're not, again, prioritizing protein, you're not getting movement, you're not doing some resistance training, a lot of that's why people have the Ozempic face, right? That's a huge problem. That semaglutide and tirzepatide, because those are the ones that we work with. But obviously there's a whole nother one, retatrutide, that people are saying doesn't have that, because it is able to fend off the muscle loss. But again, it still has to come with training.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you typically recommend as far as like movement? Why? I mean, it's probably specialized, for each
Yeah.
person, I would assume too. But even as somebody does maybe just start feeling better, especially if they are, obese, severely obese, is there anybody that you work with as far as, making sure they're getting the movement piece down, the workouts down, or anything like that? Or how do you
Yeah.
handle that?
I mean, so at the end of the day, right, it's all about some sort of movement, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if and working with you with where you're at and your baseline, right? If you're someone who hasn't worked out in decades, right? Let's just start with walking, right?
Mm-hmm.
10, 15-minute walk after each meal. Eventually get yourself up to 10,000 steps a day, right? Which that's a lot. It takes time, but you have to build up. There has to be some sort of progression. But as long as you're doing something, it's going to be better than nothing. But then you got to progress into some sort of resistance training, right? Contracting muscle. You don't have to become a bodybuilder. It can be light weights. We just need some sort of muscle contraction, so that you are putting on, or preventing that muscle wasting while you're on this medication.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, right, is prioritizing protein. I think it helps with a lot of things. It helps with a lot of the side effects that we're seeing our clients have while on these. But the biggest thing, again, it's when it comes to side effect is that nausea. I mean, it can be. I mean, you get so nauseous that clients are vomiting, right? So
Yeah.
it's just one
Yeah.
of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. I've talked to a few people that have had, severe reactions, and who knows, maybe they weren't being monitored properly, maybe they did, maybe the dose was too high, maybe they're just super sensitive to it,
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason, we don't know. But yeah, I mean, I've talked to quite a few, and I feel like a lot of people that come to me, and I mean, it seems kind of like you're doing similar kind of to what I do too. I make sure that person is ready, because I want it to be a long-term solution. And like you said, it's not going to be, even like that first doctor told your mom, it's not going to be easy. There's going to be ups and downs. It's a long journey. It's a marathon, not a sprint, that typical
Mm-hmm.
saying, right? But I do that with my clients too. And I make sure that they're fully prepared to jump in and do this, but understanding that it's not
Yeah.
going to be easy.
No, it's certainly not going to be easy. Healthcare is not easy. It's very complex, and especially for women, right? Women are much more complex to men. The studies and the data has for decades prioritized and focused on the male biology.
Yeah.
That obviously with the complexity of women's hormones, it was easy for them back then to kind of just like push it to the side. We're not going to worry about
Mhm.
that. But now we're seeing a lot more, come out for women's health, which is awesome. And we're primarily, we 65% of our clients are women. Our medical directors are former
Yeah.
OBGYN. So that's kind of where it all started. My mom, right? We found it
Yeah.
because of my mom. So we really put women's health at up at the top, at the priority, just because that you guys deserve just as much attention, if not more,
Mhm.
to your guys' health than anything. So we wanted to
Yeah.
make sure that that was a priority for us, so that we can serve everybody.
Yeah. And there's those different stages of life with women too, maybe the childbearing, years, and then you get into the perimenopausal space and the postmenopausal space
Oh
and
yeah, I mean right. It's super complex,
mhm.
and what most women don't know. Yes, menopause is coming. Perimenopause most likely starting 10, 15 years prior to that. That most
Yeah.
doctors don't even know, right? They're not even thinking about that. So when you go into your primary care talking about these symptoms, hot flashes, night sweats, they or depression, right? They're prescribing SSRIs, right? Even though it's
Yeah.
a hormone imbalance, because you're in perimenopause, that happens years before. But I think with a lot of the things that are coming out, with removal of the black box warning on hormone therapy, it's starting to open up a lot more eyes to women who have a hormone imbalance, right?
Mhm.
Should be on hormones, right? Because the sooner that you start, the more preventative benefits that you get. And that's in whatever phase of life that you're in. Not
Mhm.
just when you hit menopause, not when you're just starting out perimenopause. If you have a hormone imbalance, there's things that can be done to, you know, help transition through those different phases a lot more smoothly, than just going right into it, having those night sweats, having those side effects that women have to go through in that phase that can be supported.
Yeah. Now you do see a good amount of women with PCOS,
Yeah.
right? Is there anything that stands out to you, maybe, for those women with regards to GLP-1 and how it's helping? And it's amazing because I talked to, I don't know, a number of women these just over these last few days, I feel like, and with PCOS, and they all come with different presentations
hmm
of it. So yeah, is there anything that just kind of stands out to you in regards to GLP-1s and PCOS?
Yeah. I mean, for right, for us, you know, PCOS isn't just about a woman's period or about cysts that, the
Hmm.
conventional way of thinking, right? It's so much more complex than that.
It is, yes.
Um, but my providers are so amazing on how they're able to break it down on just what the true issue of PCOS, right? You go to your conventional provider, they're probably going to slap on birth control, maybe metformin,
Metformin. Yep.
right? Which again, these are just band-aids over symptoms. They're not treating the root cause of PCOS.
Mhm.
So you're never actually healing, or you're never actually going to get cured. And most of the time, it's actually doing more harm than good, right? Being on birth control is going to bottom out all your hormones, right? That's what it does. That's what it does to help control the periods. It's going to deprive you of your B vitamins. It's going to deprive you of your magnesium, which a lot of the times you need for energy, you need for
Mhm.
detoxing, you need to help support the inflammation. Same thing with metformin, right? That's also going to, deprive you of your B vitamins. Um, so
And
we
the side
take them
effects. Yeah.
in the side effects, right? So,
Yeah.
we take a much more comprehensive approach because we understand that it's not a period issue or a cyst issue, right? This is a problem with blood sugar regulation, inflammation, detox, and um, insulin sensitivity, right? It's
Mhm.
those things that we're really going to focus on. So how do we do that, right? How can a GLP help that? So it's not only just helping with weight loss, which a lot of the times, women with PCOS are a little bit overweight. But it's also going to help drive down the inflammation, right? It's going to help with the insulin sensitivity. So, we're utilizing GLPs, certainly if it makes sense. But you have to, again, there's just not one solution. You have to look at the whole body as a whole and how we're treating it, right? So, how are we supporting your detox pathways? What are other ways that we can help support drive down inflammation in the body, right? What are other ways that we can help with the blood sugar dysregulation or your adrenal dysfunction? Because that's one of the other pieces that I meant to say, right? Just, you're constantly in a parasympathetic state where you're in this high stress. You have to bring that down or your body can't. The goal for us and the goal for just healing in general, right, is to bring you back to homeostasis, right? So that your body can do what it is meant to do, right?
Mhm.
Drive down inflammation, detox your body, right? Control your blood sugar and insulin sensitivity. So GLPs certainly are a great tool to help us with that, right? To help regulate blood sugar, drive down inflammation while you're working with our team on the inflammation, on the detox pathways. And how, I think one of the other things that most providers are scared to do is hormone therapy with women in PCOS because they think, oh, they already have high androgens, right? These are the women who might have additional, extra facial hair or acne
Yeah.
because, they have those extra androgens. Well, what does testosterone do? Right? It helps increase insulin sensitivity, right? It can help with giving, as well as it's a massive anti-inflammatory, right? So it can, when done properly, utilized properly, that's another thing that we also can incorporate with women that come to Nava who have PCOS, as long, with the other things, right? But again, it's not just one thing, it's all the things, right? We got to
Yeah.
take that comprehensive approach because that is what it's going to be able to treat the root cause.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you seeing as far as when someone comes off of it? How do you prevent the rebound effect? The weight
Mhm.
gain, maybe the worsening insulin resistance again. How do you guys work with that?
Coming off GLPs.
Hmm.
Yeah, so again, working with our providers, we have to be very personalized to that individual, depending on who they are, just their personality, right? Have they changed those behaviors? Have they changed their nutrition and how they're doing that? But there's a few ways that we can do it. One, we eventually go into a maintenance dose, to slowly start fending you off. But hopefully after the 3, 6, 9 months that you're on that program, right? With working on us, you've started to change those behaviors to prevent that rebound, right? Ultimately, the rebound happens because people just go back to what they were doing,
Yeah.
right? That put on all that weight. So that's where I go back to the pillars. If you don't correct the pillars, if you don't treat those as foundational, right, you're not going to see the success that you want. So when coming off of it, again, slowly introducing some of the things that you might have used to eat and introducing them, see how you respond to it. Does your body like it? Do you get stomach issues, bloating? Do you feel more achy in your joints? Because most people have these food sensitivities that they don't even know about, right? So another thing you can do is you can do testing for food
That
sensitivities.
was me for the longest time.
Uh-huh. Yeah, because everyone thinks, oh, I'm eating healthy because
Yeah.
I'm eating veggies, fruit, or protein, or whatever they think
Mhm.
that is considered healthy because they read something online or an influencer said it. But again, you are one of one, right? You have your own biology. What's healthy for you is not going to be, or might not necessarily be what's healthy for me.
Mhm.
So, you have to come to a personalization on what's best for you. So again, that's where someone like Nava Health comes in who has the tools to do those kind of tests, or just the professionals that can really work side by side with you to help you understand what everything means.
Yeah. Yeah. And as we kind of wrap up, I mean, I think that's the point to hit home is that everybody is so, so different. And, I mean, I see it like I mentioned, I've been talking to just a lot of women recently, like more than normal, I feel like, that have had PCOS and just their presentations are so different. And then their experiences with the doctors tend to be similar in a way though, because they get dismissed. They're undiagnosed, for years. before they, before somebody even throws out, hey, I think this might be PCOS a lot of times. And so just because people are seeing something, like you've mentioned online, social media influencers, whatever it might be, whatever worked for them, that's great. But it does not mean it will work for you. And I think a lot of people have to understand that, because we all have different backgrounds and influences and stressors, and all these things play a role. And so that's why, working with Nava Health is a great option, obviously, because it's personalized to what they need. So, yeah. Last question is, how can anybody find you and connect with you?
Yeah, so you can find us at navacenter.com. You could also find us on social media, Nava Health. But it's super simple. The process to get started with us is the first thing that we're going to do. Before we can do anything, before we can make any recommendations, we're going to do some comprehensive labs, right? It doesn't make sense for us to again, we can meet with you and go over your symptoms and guess, right? But we're in the field of testing and not guessing. So before we can do anything, before we can make any true personalized recommendations, we're going to do comprehensive labs. You'll get an hour-long visit with one of our medical providers, and then an hour-long visit with one of our nutritionists. Between those two appointments, you're going to get a personalized plan on what you can do to help optimize your health, whether it's through GLPs, whether it's through hormones, whether it's through supplements. Again, personalized to you. Everything should be personalized. Your diet, your exercise, your supplement stack, your peptide stack, if you're on peptides, where you're going to work with some of the top experts in the field for functional and longevity medicine to get to the root cause and be proactive and preventative.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here, for having this conversation, sharing everything. I think so many listeners are going to, really benefit from this conversation. So thank you again.
No, thanks for having me.
If there's one thing I want you to take away from today's episode, it's this. There is no one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to your health. Not a medication, not a supplement, not a protocol you saw online, and that includes GLP-1s. For some people, they can be incredibly helpful, a tool that helps break a cycle, reduce inflammation, and create momentum. But like we talked about today, they are just that, a tool. Because if the underlying patterns don't change, your nutrition, your stress, your sleep, your relationship with your body, then nothing truly changes long-term. And that's the work we focus on here. Understanding your body, learning how to support it, and creating changes that actually last. So whether this episode gave you clarity, confirmed something you were already feeling, or even just opened your mind to a different perspective, I want you to sit with that. Get curious, ask questions, and most importantly, advocate for yourself. Remember, your healing isn't about finding the quick fix. It's about finding what actually works for you. If you loved this episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming up next. Share this with someone who's been thinking about GLP-1s, and leave a review so more women can find these conversations. And as always, if you're ready to go deeper and take a more personalized root cause approach to your health, you can find all the ways to work with me in the show notes. I'm sending you so much love, and I'll see you on the next episode of PCOS Unfiltered. Nourish, heal, thrive.